Women are 51% of the population. They're 57% in the workforce. 56% of college enrollment is women, and yet we only have about 20% of women on publicly traded company boards.
A demand for change in the workplace, giving more women a seat in the boardroom and closing the gender pay gap between men and women. How to find out who's making what in the office and get the pay you deserve.
Your gender identity is your own identity, not someone else's.
Views on gender identity are expanding. California now offering gender options on driver's license and birth certificates. But advocates say there's still a long way to go.
It's hard work, trying to be authentic.
Tonight, a special presentation of KCRA 3's Project CommUNITY, exploring gender equality.
Thank you for joining us for our Project CommUNITY special, Exploring Gender Equity. I'm Lisa Gonzalez. Just over half of the U.S. population, 51%, are women. Yet companies selling to people across the country, even here in California, had few or no women in leadership. But with legislation and tenacity, that is finally changing.
We all know that feet come in all shapes and sizes.
Sometimes the ads target the audience.
Gabrielle Chanel said, every time I've done something reasonable, it's brought me bad luck.
And sometimes they target everyone.
The next generation of TiVo Bolt.
But for years and years, companies throughout California and the U.S., even ones that sold almost exclusively to women, had one thing in common. Most of the company's board members were men.
Women are 51% of the population. They're 57% in the workforce, and then they're 56% of college enrollment is women, and yet we only have about 20% of women on publicly traded company boards.
Amy Bernard-Bon is a consultant. She works with those big companies and consults small ones too, like the restaurant Rind in Midtown Sacramento, adding that it just makes good business sense to have women represented in the company. But until recently, even companies like those owning Chanel and Estee Lauder, female-oriented brands, had no women on the board.
If you just look at the numbers, you're leaving talent on the table if you're doing that. And I don't know any successful business that looks at business strategy that way.
California has 400 publicly traded companies, yet by 2013, only 15% of the directors were women. Companies like Skechers or TiVo still have no women on their boards.
One of the last bastions where women are way underrepresented is in the corporate boardroom.
So 5 years ago, the Senate passed a resolution to try to address the problem.
The resolution passed fairly overwhelmingly.
Santa Barbara Senator Hannah Beth Jackson authored that resolution, but it didn't work.
The needle had moved from 15.5% of all those board seats held by women to a whole 16%.
So Jackson moved from passing a resolution to passing a law.
Without those women being able to have a seat at the table, without them being able to be part of the decision-making, the policy-making for these companies, there is a real loss of opportunity that this legislation is designed to correct.
That law takes effect in January 2020. It will be tracked by the Department of Fair Employment and Housing, the Department of Industrial Relations, and the Secretary of State. If companies don't comply, they'll face stiff fines.
If you're a board of 6 or more, you're going to have 3 women on the board. If you have 1 woman or no woman, and you should have 3, the fine will be equal to what you pay in compensation to a board member. So it could be up to $250,000 a board seat.
And both Bernard-Bon and Senator Jackson believe if companies like the Weinstein Company had women on the board, those secret settlements for Harvey Weinstein's alleged sexual abuse would never have happened.
The board of directors was well aware of this man's behavior and had put hundreds of millions of dollars away from its profits, from the potential for shareholder benefits, in order to pay for this man's indiscretions and outrageous and criminal behavior. I just can't imagine a company with women on those boards that would have tolerated that behavior.
But with the new law poised to take effect in less than a year, companies are already making changes.
And I've got 2 daughters, and they're really smart, and I want them to have access to these opportunities. And frankly, as a governance expert, I want our companies to thrive.
Changes both women see as hopeful for the next generation of women. Senator Jackson's law did not face much opposition. In fact, companies are already asking for resources to find more qualified women. California isn't the first to create this law. Several European countries had even stronger laws passed as far back as 2004.